What is woke? It's this word that people use all the time, insufferably you might say. But what does it even mean anymore? Where did it come from? We have all the info, plus we're going to run down some of the funniest examples of things that have been called woke, including dinosaurs and Frankenstein, on this extra woke edition of Scroll Deep with me, Benedict Townsend, the show that keeps up with woke internet nonsense so you don't have to. Before we begin, make sure you're following so you're the first to hear all the latest nonsense. Is there any word that has become more meaningless than woke? It's a term that has been basically abandoned by the left, but which is a point of absolute obsession for the right and has been for years. But I really don't know what it means anymore, and I don't think they do either, and I find that fascinating. So today, we're going to investigate. And why don't we start with the origin, because this is a word that did mean something at some point. In fact, the word woke has origins going all the way back to the 1930s. It's been used for close to 100 years, and it's always meant basically the same thing, which is that you need to have an awareness about social inequalities. It was predominantly associated with African Americans, still very much is, but over time it's been expanded to other groups as well. Now, for those of us who are old enough, I'm of course 24, you'll remember that this has already happened with another term, political correctness, which then got shortened to PC. And during the first, 10 to 15 years of the 2000s, you couldn't escape the term PC. And it was basically exactly the same as woke is now, a just completely generic term that you could use to attack anything progressive, or really anything involving minorities or women that you didn't like. It basically all stems from the fact that people want to be racist, sexist, homophobic, take your pick. But unlike in, say, the 1970s or whatever, you can't just do that openly. Partly because you will experience a negative reaction, which you don't want, but also because, weirdly, these people are very sensitive to being labeled as a bigot. Like, no one hates being called racist more than a racist person. So in order to basically say the quiet part loud, they say woke instead. It's like a very slight dog whistle, even though it's very clear what they're saying. And as the years have gone on, it has just become more and more vague. Let's run down some of the craziest examples. We had the renaming of a British submarine from Agincourt to Achilles. That was called woke. That was of course done because the Battle of Agincourt was a battle between Britain and France, and they thought, hey, maybe we shouldn't name a nuclear submarine after a battle where we defeated one of our closest allies. That's not woke, that's just polite. One of my personal favorites was the headline about how Frankenstein is woke now because people are claiming that the monster is a victim. Is that not? That's the entire story of Frankenstein, that the monster's the victim. I'm kind of intrigued by like how other people interpret that. They're like, Frankenstein is a ghoulish tale about how it's fun when there's a monster. I like Frankenstein because I hate subtext, and it's just a nice story about villagers chasing people. There was also accusations that they'd made a woke T-Rex in some sort of David Attenborough dinosaur program. I didn't even really look into how that is possible, but apparently they've made a woke T-Rex now. There's also things like the now infamous solo poly hijabi amputee, which was this Instagram infographic where someone was trying to explain solo poly, and that has just been widely mocked by the left and the right, because that's, first of all, that is a type of person that could exist, so let's not poo-poo that, but it very much feels like a person has just like spun a big wheel of like qualities and just assembled a person, like tried to assemble the wokest cartoon you can, which feels cynical and silly, and that is why it has been rightly mocked by the left and the right. So I guess that's an example of like performative wokeness that went too far. But also, was anyone hurt by that? Did that actually negatively affect anyone's lives? That you had to see that image? No, it was a little bit silly and we all moved on. Like, it doesn't matter. So I'm sure you'll agree it's all ridiculous. But how do we get here? Okay, well, first of all, allow me to say the most insufferable sentence you'll ever hear a straight white man say, which is, let me play devil's advocate for a moment. Is there any truth to the anti-woke sentiment, right? Is there any truth to woke gone mad? We need to be thorough. I think the most sensible or generously non-offensive way that people use woke, or what they call in France, le wokisme. They genuinely call it le wokisme in France. I thought they'd call it a woke royale, but there you go. I think the most reasonable criticism of woke culture is that it's basically annoying. People don't like being annoyed. People treat it as overcorrection, right? Which does tie into the general online attitude of scolding that we have at the moment, where everyone is mad at each other all the time, everyone is telling each other off all the time, which is annoying. But I think a lot of these like woke gone too far stories are always just basically not true. That's why they're annoying, is because they're not real. You know, there's always some story that's like, they're banning scarecrows because they are men. And you see that and you're like, damn, that's nuts. That's so nuts, it's almost hard to believe. And then you look into it and it isn't real. It isn't real at all. It's just made up. There was one story we saw that they wanted to rename a ploughman's lunch to a plough person's lunch, which is very funny and pointless. But again, I do think if you dig into this stuff, it's not like the government is passing a law that says you have to do that. Most of the time, someone just vaguely suggests it in a local meeting somewhere, and then these newspapers blow it up. Also, a good time to shout out Kathy Burke, who once said, "I love being woke. It's much nicer than being an ignorant which is just an iconic quote at all times. But I do think we are now basically at the end of the road for both le wokeism and also anti-woke. I think people are just sick of hearing the word. Like I said, like the left doesn't even talk in terms of wokeness. And like the left gave up on woke as a phrase years ago, once it became just this annoying right-wing sticking point, which means it's high time for a new phrase to come in to be the new generic dog whistle. Now, initially it seemed like this was going to be DEI, but I actually think DEI has not got the staying power because I think people got too greedy with DEI and were just too overtly racist. Because woke has this vague, broad fig leaf of just like, I'm against progressive stuff. Whereas DEI just seems to be specifically racist and quite specifically anti-black racist. Like, for example, Trump recently fired the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Charles Quinton Brown. There were people, including people in the Trump administration, who were calling him the DEI general. God forbid I defend the military-industrial complex of the United States, but this was an incredibly qualified general, but also he was black. And so when you're calling him the DEI general, that's just racist. That's just racism. Like, how else can you argue that? And I think because it is so on the nose and so offensive, it won't have the staying power, because I don't think ordinary people can trick themselves into thinking that it's in any way an acceptable thing to throw out. Also, I think it's just too tied to Trump and Elon and this whole mess, which people have already turned on. It's crazy how much people are already over Trump too. One of the funniest things about the woke obsession on the right is that they have now woked themselves out of basically all the things they like. Like, they don't like Bud Light anymore because of Dylan Mulvaney, who, by the way, made one Instagram story. They act like Dylan Mulvaney was the face of the brand, which, hey, why not make her the face of the brand? Who cares? They woke themselves out of beer. They woke themselves out of American football. I think they've woke themselves out of the military. Like, everything that the right wing actually likes, they're not allowed to enjoy anymore because of woke. All they've got left is Kid Rock. In my authority as a woke liberal, I am now going to announce what is truly woke and what isn't. Power tools, woke. I saw a woman in a video game once, woke. Marvel Cinematic Universe. Why are you watching a movie called Ant-Man? You want to watch a man? Woke. Every time you comment DEI on something, you're bringing awareness to DEI, which is in itself useful and woke of you. So commenting DEI is woke. In fact, the person watching this right now, woke. I've woke to you. Wake up. Some of the people who do capitalism are Chinese. Woke. What, you're celebrating the day you were born from a woman? A woman's involved? Sounds pretty woke to me. Happy birthday to you, wokey. So what will the next word be? Well, I'd like to introduce a new word. A phrase, in fact. It's got a different message. Instead of a message of division, it's a message of epic coolness. Try and think of the most epic thing you've ever thought of. Bacon, for example. This phrase is even more epic than bacon. And that phrase is, that's tennis. Keep your eyes out for That's Tennis merch on the way, because if there's a way we can monetize this, we bloody will. I say we, I'm not getting any of that money, but someone's monetizing it. But we come to the question of the day, which is, am I wrong for thinking that we could be something for real? Oh yeah. Am I wrong? Is woke actually real and strong and your friend? Do you think woke has gone too far? Would you consider yourself woke? I think we're at a point now where it's come full circle, where people are just like, yes, I am woke. What do you keep calling me woke? Fine, I am. Now what? You've used your favorite word. Now what? What else you got? Let me know in the comments down below your opinions. This has been the episode. That's tennis.